Have you ever wondered what lies behind the headscarf and the secluded lives of Muslim women? Secrets that you might never have thought about. Today, we will enter a mysterious and fascinating world where ancient traditions and unique habits may surprise you. From strict dress codes to little-known cultural norms, this video will reveal 9 strange things Muslim women might never want outsiders to discover. Get ready, because you will witness a different and magical side of their lives, where secrets and wonders intertwine with unexpected surprises. Number 9. Virginity tests before marriage. In today's modern world where women's rights are increasingly advocated for and protected on international platforms, it's surprising that in some Muslim countries pre-marriage virginity tests are still practiced. This means that many women are forced to prove that they are pure before marriage to ensure that they have not been intimate with any other man before officially becoming a wife. This process not only causes physical pain but also has significant psychological effects. Women must undergo medical tests to verify something they have no control over. If they fail this test, they might be rejected for marriage and, in many cases, face even harsher consequences from their families or society, such as stigma, abandonment, or violence. The international community, particularly human rights organizations, has repeatedly condemned this practice, calling it a severe violation of women's human rights and dignity. However, in many parts of the world, virginity tests remain an essential tradition tied to the honor of the family. In some Muslim cultures, a woman's virginity is closely linked to family honor, and proving purity before marriage is seen as necessary to uphold the family's pride and reputation. Sadly, some families even require a doctor or nurse to issue a medical certificate of purity, creating deep embarrassment and emotional trauma. This harsh tradition perpetuates social pressure and mental anguish that women must endure. Number 8. Honor over life. One of the most brutal and condemned aspects of extremist Muslim cultures is the idea that honor is more important than life, often leading to violence against women within their own families to protect the so-called family honor. It may seem hard to believe, but hundreds of women are killed by their loved ones each year simply because they are accused of violating moral or religious norms, sometimes based on mere suspicion or groundless prejudice. Acts considered to dishonor a family can be diverse and often absurd. Some women are suspected of infidelity, refuse arranged marriages, or simply wear clothing deemed inappropriate by strict family standards. Even something as innocent as talking to a man without family permission can be enough to be accused of bringing shame to the family. Although this is not a formal Islamic rule, the practice of honor killings persists in many countries, especially in rural areas and conservative religious communities, where traditional values are passed down through generations. For many in the West, the concept of honor over life seems incomprehensible, particularly in modern society. In the US and other developed nations, individual freedoms, especially the right to life, are considered sacred and inviolable. Therefore, when honor killings come to light, they shock and ignite waves of outrage and protest from the international community. Human rights organizations and activists strongly condemn these acts as barbaric violations of human rights. The tragedy goes beyond just taking the lives of innocent women. These women often endure a long cycle of both physical and mental abuse. What's even more heartbreaking is that in many places, the perpetrators, often the father, brothers, or husband of the victim, rarely face severe punishment from the law. They may escape punishment, be forgiven by the community, or even be seen as protectors of family honor. This lack of justice perpetuates a cycle of violence and oppression that many women endure without escape. While women's rights movements are gaining strength worldwide, many countries remain unwilling to abandon these deep-rooted traditions, forcing women to live in fear and denying them the most basic right of all, the right to live. Number 6. The hidden life behind closed doors. The private lives of Muslim women are often surrounded by mystery and misunderstanding, especially in Western cultures. Behind closed doors, they lead rich and complex lives, balancing religious traditions, family responsibilities, and, in many cases, personal and professional ambitions. In many Muslim cultures, the home is considered a woman's domain, where she wields significant influence and control over many aspects of life. Family responsibilities extend beyond cleaning or cooking. They include educating children and managing household finances. These duties, though seemingly mundane, are highly valued and respected within the community, seen as extensions of a woman's role in caring for and protecting her family. One common activity is preparing elaborate meals, particularly during Ramadan and other religious festivals. Women spend hours cooking traditional dishes not only to nourish their families, but also to strengthen family and community bonds. Additionally, during Ramadan, they play a crucial role in preparing iftar, the meal that breaks the fast. This act is seen not only as service but as an expression of love and respect for both family and faith. In many Muslim families, women also engage in private spiritual practices that go unseen. This includes reading the Quran, performing extra prayers beyond the 5 mandatory daily prayers, and other personal acts of worship. These activities are viewed as ways to strengthen their connection to God and seek peace and balance in daily life. Alongside traditional responsibilities, many Muslim women are finding ways to pursue their career and educational aspirations, even within cultural constraints. With increased access to the internet and online education, they are taking advantage of new opportunities to learn and work remotely. This phenomenon allows many women to balance family duties with personal ambitions, creating a new model of the Muslim woman who is both devout and professional. Number 5. Social media monitoring. Social media has always been seen as a platform where people can freely express themselves, share thoughts, and connect with friends. However, for many Muslim women, this is not so simple. In some Muslim countries, the use of social media is strictly monitored not only by the state but also by family and community. Many women face constant scrutiny over what they post, who they connect with, and even the posts they like or share. Their families, especially male members, may implement monitoring measures, checking women's social media accounts to ensure they do not violate religious or moral codes. This creates anxiety and fear for many women, who worry about being discovered engaging in relationships outside of marriage or simply expressing personal opinions on social or individual matters. As social media becomes increasingly integral to daily life, women in Muslim countries must find ways to adapt to this control. Some choose to create anonymous accounts to protect their personal freedom, while others self-censor, only posting safe content to avoid punishment or family conflicts. This restriction is not limited to public posts but also extends to controlling private messages. In many cases, families may demand access to personal messages, causing significant stress and psychological pressure, particularly for younger women. In addition to families, religious communities can also play a role in monitoring online activities. Some mosques or religious organizations monitor what women share to ensure they comply with Islamic principles. This adds to the pressure and sense of confinement in the digital world. Number 4. Restrictions on movement. In many Muslim societies, women face significant restrictions on their freedom of movement. These limitations are often based on traditional interpretations of Sharia law and justified by the need to protect women's modesty and safety. However, in some countries, these restrictions can become extremely oppressive. For instance, in Saudi Arabia, women require permission from a male guardian, who could be their father, husband, brother, or even son, to travel, work, or receive certain medical treatments. Despite significant reforms in recent years, such as lifting the driving ban for women and easing some guardianship regulations, many of these restrictions persist in unofficial or cultural forms. In Iran, women must follow strict dress codes when going outside, and may have their movements restricted by morality police, who have the authority to detain women they deem improperly dressed. Many Iranian women have been arrested, fined, or even imprisoned for violating these rules, with some cases involving corporal punishment. Another extreme example of movement restrictions occurred in Afghanistan, where, during the Taliban regime, women could not leave their homes without a male relative accompanying them and were required to wear a full-body burqa. Although the Taliban was overthrown in 2001, some of these practices still exist in areas controlled by extremist groups. These restrictions not only limit women's personal freedom but also affect their access to education, employment, and healthcare. Limited mobility can lead to significant social isolation and economic dependence on men, further entrenching gender inequality. Nevertheless, despite these barriers, many Muslim women have found ways to challenge and overcome these restrictions. Activists and advocates for women's rights across the Muslim world are tirelessly working to promote gender equality and ensure that women can enjoy the same rights and freedoms as men. Number 3. Bans on spiritual leadership. In many Muslim societies, women face significant restrictions on taking up roles in spiritual leadership. These limitations stem from traditional interpretations of Sharia law and cultural norms, which often reserve religious leadership roles for men. As a result, women are excluded from positions such as imam, religious lecturers, and religious judges. This exclusion profoundly impacts their participation in religious and community life. In most mosques, women often have separate prayer areas, which are usually less accessible and poorly equipped compared to men's areas. This discrimination extends to religious education, where women have fewer opportunities to study theology or Islamic law at higher levels. One reason for these restrictions is the interpretation of certain passages in the Quran and Hadith, which suggests that men should lead prayers while women must follow their guidance in religious matters. However, it is important to recognize that these interpretations are not universal. In some progressive Muslim communities, women are beginning to take on more prominent roles in religious life. For example, there are initiatives in Western countries where mosques led by women have been established, and some women have become imams, leading prayers for mixed or female-only congregations. Despite these advancements, women aspiring to spiritual leadership often face strong opposition and many challenges. In some cases, female religious leaders have endured threats and harassment from those opposing their involvement. The fight for equality in spiritual leadership is part of a larger movement for women's rights in the Muslim world. Women are reclaiming their place in the religious sphere, arguing that exclusion perpetuates gender inequality and limits their influence in the community. Although this movement is still in its early stages in many regions, it represents a crucial step toward inclusion and equality in Islamic religious life. Number 2. Limited education. The education of Muslim women varies significantly across different regions, but in many societies, they still face restrictions that hinder their access to higher education. These limitations are often influenced by conservative interpretations of Sharia law and cultural norms that prioritize traditional roles for women as wives and mothers over educational and career development. In some countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan, girls may be prevented from attending school by extremist groups that believe female education is unnecessary or even dangerous. For instance, the Taliban have attacked schools and threatened girls who try to pursue an education. Despite these challenges, many brave girls and women continue to fight for their right to education, often at great personal risk. In countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, while women are allowed to study, they still face significant barriers to full participation. In Iran, although women make up a large proportion of university students, they are still restricted in the fields they can choose and face limited job opportunities after graduation. Additionally, universities are often segregated by gender, and women may experience discrimination in classrooms and workplaces. Globally, efforts to improve education for women in Muslim societies have made some progress. International and local organizations are working tirelessly to provide educational resources and opportunities for girls and women in disadvantaged communities. Despite cultural and political barriers, progress in female education is evident, with more women obtaining higher degrees and becoming leaders in their fields. However, the path toward educational equality is still long. Structural and cultural barriers continue to prevent many Muslim women from realizing their full academic potential. The fight for female education in the Muslim world reflects the larger struggle for women's rights and gender equality, a struggle that remains urgent and necessary.